My guest today is Jerry Nixon. Jerry, it's good to have you back.
It is. It feels like it's been so long, David.
So we're doing back-to-back episodes here because the last one was so interesting. I wanted to talk to you some more about this other cool thing that you mentioned. This is, what do you tell me? You tell our viewers what's cool.
All right. So AI is the buzzword. I know that. And it's been, the downside is it's kind of been overtalked. You know what I mean? Or like we have AI at this point. But there is some stuff that is worth talking about here that, like, how does a developer really get AI into their application in a serious way? Not the nickel and dime sort of goofy stuff that everybody's been showing so far, but like the real sort of interaction that is important to your boss, right? And the biggest way is to make it so that a model that you're interacting with, either a small or large language model that you're talking to, has the ability to actually do something. And so the recent introduction that Anthropic has for MCP, the Model Context Protocol, allows for models to act like agents, to be able to do actual operations. The MCP protocol says, here are the operations that you can actually do. So sometimes it's one thing, sometimes it's 10. For us, and for me, since I'm on the SQL team, I think about those tools as, what can you do in the database? Because can you go and fetch data? Can you update data? Things along that line. A lot of developers think, well, I'll just have my model write SQL and execute it against the SQL database. And although that can work, there's a risk all of a sudden that you don't know the type of query that it's going to write. And so there's this new risk that you've introduced that by mistake, it either does a join incorrectly, very innocently, or it deletes a table innocently, right? I mean, you just never really know. You're like, I want to delete every user from my system and make sure that I can't create another. Okay, I'll just drop the table. Well, that's not what I wanted you to do, right? You have to just really think that the model is just very innocent. It's like having a 4-year-old genius on your development team that could do anything, and they're not trying to hack your system. They're trying to do what you want them to do. They just don't really have in their mind all the things that you have and knowledge about your business and business process. So I just want to kind of show really an architectural approach, just talking about it from one developer engineer to another, one software engineer to another.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What kind of tools are we using here?
So I'm using Blazor as my web application, but It could be any web application. It's just interacting with an OpenAI backend. I'm using Azure OpenAI as the backend, and that's because if I use Azure OpenAI instead of OpenAI, or instead of a ChatGPT model from OpenAI directly, then I have this sort of wall around it to make sure that the data is secure and I'm not ever leaking outside. So that's really good because that makes my boss pretty happy, knowing that it's secure. Microsoft makes all the commitments for us. And so we just sue the pants off of Microsoft if anything were to go wrong. And so that's the important part. And then I'm just hosting this as a web app, in an app service in Azure. You could do it anywhere. And I'm using Azure SQL Database on the back end. The two things that matter is I have a web application, pick your language, but I also have an MCP server. I've written it in C#. I'll walk you kind of through the code to see just how unbelievably simple it is. It's just a few lines here and there. And that's because MCP is really just a wrapper around the work that you've already done. And so I am hosting Data API Builder in front of SQL. And the reason I do that is Data API Builder is a REST endpoint in front of SQL. It's basically saying, listen, if you want to do anything to the database, just go through Data API Builder. It won't let you drop a table. It won't let you mess up a join. It won't let you do all the things I wouldn't want you to do. Instead, it will give you tons of capability without all the extra risk. So it's almost like adding this safety layer in between the database and your MCP server to make sure that all the worst case scenarios that you have in your mind don't happen. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. And in fact, I'll just tell our viewers that if they want to learn more about Data API Builder, you and I talked about this in episode 828 on the same channel. So they can review that.
Nice.
And you know what? I think the other things are they're really flexible. I think you're talking about conceptually about an approach. It doesn't matter what the front end is. Really doesn't matter what the back end is, as long as it conforms to these MCP protocols.
I have a small architecture diagram. Do you want me to show it to you real quick?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, it might help kind of clarify it.
And maybe a demo too.
Yeah, definitely got a demo. I got a demo sitting right here. All right, there we go. What's that? Slow to click the right button there. Okay, so this is oversimplified, of course, but it's intended to be. So you have some sort of client application that the user is using. So I was using Blazor, but maybe you're using a React app, or maybe a WinUI app, or whatever it is, or a mobile application. It already has a connection to your large language model. It is not going through your database or anything along those lines. Instead, it's talking to your language model like all the demos you've seen before. And so you could say to your model, for example, who is my largest customer? And it wouldn't know the answer, right? Because you haven't given it that information. You may be trying to seed it information through a RAG pattern, but this is going to be a lot simpler approach for sure. And so here, this is what we're talking about, right? Let me see, right here. So this is just talking to OpenAI. What we want to make it, what we want to do is make it so we know that our data is stored inside SQL, and we know that we want to wrap SQL around a data API builder, so there's only these REST endpoints that it interacts with. Great. Now I want to have an MCP server, and that's just a wrapper around that, but in a set of contracts and API kind of signatures that AI agents can recognize. You are running an MCP client right here. And that is, you're going to be responsible for figuring out the technology that you want to use and how it's going to work. But nonetheless, there's going to be an MCP client, probably one of the clients that are provided by Anthropic on their GitHub repository, if I were guessing. And what happens is you say as the user, who's my largest client? But before you say that, you're about to pass down your prompt. Before that prompt is there, a list of tools is attached to that prompt automatically by the MCP client that you have running. So that means now you've asked this question over to your model and provided it a list of tools that it can use to answer questions like that, including something like list clients by size. Let's just make it real easy. And so maybe you have a tool that's that explicit. And so then the model's like, I need to figure out who that is. I will then say, the model will then say, let's use list customers by size. The client gets that response, not you. You don't know that this is going on yet because it's all kind of behind the scenes to make it easy. It passes the tool request and all of the parameters that are customized to use it. So for example, filter by size, or whatever it is, limited to Jerry's clients and things like that. Then that is passed and executes against Data API Builder. Data API Builder is the thing that writes the T-SQL for you, right? Up till here, it's JSON. And so it then executes the query against the database, returns the list of all of your highest customers. That then is kind of passed back through the pipeline. And then the model can format that small little chunk of data that it has received and figure out the answer to whatever my question was, and then provide it back to me as if I had just asked it this question and it knew the information. So it sounds like, because I talked about it nice and slow, it sounds like that would take and add a lot of latency, but it doesn't, right? The way this is written is meant to be lightweight and fast. The way SQL responds is fast. The way that the models respond is fast. So really you say, what's my biggest customer? And it says Acme Inc. It's almost as quick as that, even though behind the scenes, quite a few operations are executing on your behalf.
I like the simplicity. It's abstracting away all the complexity.
And because this is running kind of together, the server runs in the context of the user. And because the server is running in the context of the user, that means your REST endpoint runs in the context of the user, which also means that SQL is running. So it's not that the model is trying to access all of your data. It's that the user is talking and getting the data you would have been able to get anyway. So there's often a kind of a security concern as well. And using an MCP approach like this helps solve that too. So I've got a demo that kind of walks through the basics of this, really just from a UI point of view, just to, like, what would it look like if you tried to do something like this?
Let's see it.
All right. So this is part of the demo that I created and launched well, that's funny. Hang on just a second. It looks like I need to reopen it. Okay, so I'm going to fast forward to the end because I want to kind of show only the AI part. Okay, so I have this is what an MCP tool looks like. It looks like a method decorated with attributes that explain what the method does. So in this case, see if I can get it full screen. This is the claim method. So it's a little bit hidden by this. So I have the actual method here. Let me show you what it looks like if we were just inside Visual Studio. So here's real Visual Studio rather than my kind of snippet of it. And here's my MCP server and all the tools. I have a claims server, and it'll feel good to a developer to be able to see one of these actually implemented. And so in this case, it is a get claim. So I am going to get from a table of claims for an insurance company in this case, a list of all of the claims based on some predicate that the model decides. So I only want the claims for David Giard. I only want the claims that are for auto insurance. I only want the claims for a boat. I only want the ones in 2025. Whatever that is, the model gets to decide the filter predicates. This is just the method that provides it. What's important is these are the decorations that allow the model to understand what it's like. Okay, I'm going to get, here are the keys to the table I interact with. Here are the foreign keys that I'm going to receive back. Here are all the other columns that are in that. There eventually is a limit because all of this text gets it turns into embeddings, which take up a token limit of an MCP server. So there's this strange balance that only you could do, David, for your own application. Only I could do for mine, where I get to determine where is the threshold limit of giving as much data and information as possible to the models while not exceeding the token limit. So maybe I need to give information about my business rules, not about the structure of the table. Maybe I need to give the structure of the table. The business rules can almost be inferred. They're so obvious. So you get to kind of do this delicate dance. That's the reason that's the reason we call it work, because you're going to have to go through this part of figuring out how you can decorate it to make it to be successful. There'll be tests along the way to make sure. And so you even decorate the parameters themselves, right? And so this says an $OData $filter string. That's because I'm using Data API Builder that supports that. And you can see it's just a filter, but it has to be structured one way or another. So I'm giving examples to the model so it knows how to use it. Also, remember this is a generally trained model. So it already knows what OData is. It already knows what OData filters are. So because we're using something that's generically implemented on an existing standard like OData and REST, you don't have to explain the entire construct to it. You can just say, use what you already know. Here's some examples to make sure you get it right. All right, so this is a single tool, like one tool. I have another tool down here where instead of getting claims, I can, let's see, what is it? I can upsert a claim, right? So I can make a change to a claim or insert a brand new claim as well, right? So the same sort of thing, a lot less information being passed in because you can allow for the information in one tool to actually inform another tool as you do that kind of dance around how many tokens we can use. I believe the specification currently, which is a ever evolving specification around MCP, is 1024 tokens for all of the tools in the server. So that sounds like a lot, but it's not all that many. And so there's another thing to consider, and that's how many tools you expose. To me, it seems a lot smarter to have one or two servers rather than one server with a family of tools in each of those. So while it might feel like, oh, I could create one MCP server to rule them all, as soon as you get up to around 20, I think some, like Claude, for example, can go to maybe 30 or 40, depending on the tool. All of a sudden, you've overwhelmed the model with too much information. So the whole idea is to winnow it down to give a really specific thing. All right, so that's a lot of information. Has nothing to do with kind of what we're talking about, other than the caveats that you'll learn along the way that to build a fully functional and nice tool. All right, so this is where we are. That was the server that we were just looking at, just a wrapper around Data API Builder, but in the language or inside the contract that is understood by the model. So really neat stuff. Let me go back to the video And here we go. And let it kind of play through. There's only a minute left, but I want you to kind of see what's going on. This is me as I'm showing off the tool and making the point, even in the demo here, that we want to give as much as we can to make the model successful. This is what the app looks like. And so let me pause just for a second and say, there's no change to your app, with the one exception. We remove the need for so much work in your app. So in this app, for example, I can edit this customer and I can go in and I make changes and I can click save. But that may not be what you want anymore. It might be that the app of the future, which is AI enabled, is a read-only app that just shows information. And as you're making changes, the AI is doing the changes behind the scenes. And I'll show you that you don't even need, you can go from view-only mode to edit mode. And we've done those sort of view state switches inside our apps. And the future app may not need all of that extra development code, which is good for us. And let me let the demo keep going so that I can show you what I mean. So this is just the chat window into OpenAI. I can say list my customers, and remember it goes and does that. So here are the 4 customers, the same result that I have in the UI as well. And so in this case, I'm giving it a pretty wild command. John's name is actually Marcus. There was an error in data entry. Now, what's interesting about that is it has context into what we were talking about already. Right. I don't have to say John Doe. I don't have to say customer ID 123. It knows from the context. Oh, you must mean of the 4 I just showed you, and it does. And then I could say there was a data entry with his name. What's even more interesting about that is John's name is Marcus, and it understands that that's a first name, not the last name that needs to be updated. And so if I go ahead and make that change, there's the change. So this is my real app. It really does do this. And so it shows that there's Marcus and John Doe with his name changed, right? Pretty cool. And so that's not going in and making a change to, or that's not going in and editing it inside of an editor. It doesn't mean an editor will never show up. I'm just showing how the future of app development really is starting down a new direction that could dramatically change, especially when you think about the model can be forced to follow business rules that a user might find its way around. And so you could have a very compliant model that does all the things the way it's supposed to do, and maybe a task that makes it so UI doesn't have to be thought through so much to be so clean. Oh, here's another one. All right, so Samantha just sent me an email. Now, this is important because all of these things are in context. So yes. Samantha just sent me an email. She's one of my, Samantha Jones up here. She sent me an email on last Tuesday so that I have, now it knows the date, right? So it knows today's date and it can back up to Tuesday. I didn't have to tell it the date. She told me she just married Marcus Doe, the guy whose name we just changed. She's going to take his name. So a model knows you don't take first name, you take last name. And she also wants property policy on her wedding ring for $1,000, effective the 1st of next month, right? All of these things contextually that a model understands, and I don't have to go work them out. There's no calendar drop down and all that. I mean, you know what I mean? Like it really can simplify the entire thing. Now I execute that and I'm waiting. So there's a pause going on in the video, and there it is. So it answers back and says Samantha's name and address have been updated, a property policy for a wedding ring has been added, and outside of everything, communication records for the last Tuesday have been logged, right? So there's an internal business requirement that was followed by the model that may not have been followed by the user. So here's Samantha. You can see her last name was changed to Doe to match Marcus's name. We go down to her list, and she has a brand new property list or property policy for her wedding ring for $1,000 effective the next month. And then down here, you can see the communication for Samantha has been added. Samantha informed, it's kind of hard to see behind this. I wish this didn't happen. Samantha informed that she married Marcus Doe and updated her last name, address, and property policy for, and then there's more information on it. All of that gets done automatically, all because I'm letting the AI do all of this for me. And I've given 5 tools to the AI, right? I can say, go get my users or go get my policies, go get my customers and upsert them this way, right? And so really simplistic tools that it's able to do a lot of extra and kind of exotic work that it wasn't able to do before. All right. So that's this. And so I'll let this play out just because it's sort of fun. We have a lot of new developer like capabilities now inside of inside of SQL. And this was the earlier part of the demo that I skipped across when I was sliding the shuttle across. But now that we're trying to make it so that all of the AI capability that developers need is sort of built into the database. And we're also trying to make a pretty significant change to make it so that we can take the MCP server that you're required to write today, even though it's very straightforward, and make it so that we can merge that in to Data API Builder, so that once you expose Data API Builder, right now you can say, give me a REST API, enabled equals true. Give me a GraphQL API, enabled equals true. And we want to introduce, and we hopefully will have introduced by end of the year maybe, MCP server enabled equals true as well. And then you can decide which tools are exposed, and then you have the capability of making it so that you can also comment and kind of control the token flow back from the MCP server back to your model as well. So a lot of like very futuristic things are coming, but you can do this today. I mean, this demo works right now using this kind of simplified architecture, and we just hope to make it even simpler by collapsing the MCP server into Data API Builder. But the apps that you and I built growing up, David, are about to change pretty significantly. Once we are able to constrain and kind of control the models so that we can have deterministic behaviors, this is the way you're going to want it. You're going to want somebody calls talking to your customer service rep. The rep is like, you know what you need? You need for me to provision blah, blah, blah. And then they just say, provision for David, the blah, blah, blah. And the 16 things all happen. And what didn't happen was an engineering team have to build an entire UI and then train a user on all the complex things. And whenever the business process is behind the scenes, build it again, train them again, instead of just letting the model follow the kind of fluid nature of whatever your enterprise is doing. So it's the brave new world that's coming for sure. It's completely possible today, right? And you can already introduce Data API Builder so you're not running raw SQL against your database. There might be a time when raw SQL against your database is okay. I can't imagine that. If I were the one responsible for the behavior of the model, I would want to make sure that it was inside this box. This is the box that it can do. Maybe it's a big box, but I don't want it to have this kind of free for all behavior where the user now needs to review a query to make sure the join is correct or make sure that the usage is correct. No. I want something like the query builder inside Data API Builder to do it for me. Pretty neat, don't you think?
It sounds really neat. In fact, not only what's happening now, but the things that are coming in the future. Where can people go to learn more about this?
The easiest is, well, it's just a, let me see. There we go. I just happen to have it in the last little bit of the slide here. So you can go to AKMS / jump to the end. And I think if I pause it, it will
in the show notes.
Bring this crazy thing. But there it is nonetheless. And so you can go to AKMS / DAB / SQL. And we have a learning path that is AKMS / SQL / dev / path. SQL dev path. And it walks through and gives you an actual credential you can put in LinkedIn and stuff as well. So a lot of neat capabilities that we're trying to make it. So if you're a developer and you want to learn how to do this, we want to give you as many resources as possible.
Excellent. Just send that to me and I'll put them in the show notes so folks can.
Absolutely will. Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
This has been great. I've enjoyed talking to you, and I've enjoyed doing back-to-back episodes with you, and I've learned a lot in the last hour and 10 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thanks, David. The applications you build are getting more and more sophisticated, but thanks to our good friend AI, it actually makes it so they could get simpler and simpler. It's a technology that you can fall in love with as long as you understand what you're doing.